What's up, AP Lit? Today we're going to be discussing short stories. So, the stories we've read when we were little shaped our basic set of morals, and as we get older and read more stories, we can expand our definition of human nature. As we saw in this short story unit, similar themes are found in stories set in totally different settings. This is because people act in similar patterns. In this case, we uncovered how people react when one force dominates over their lives. We've all read our fair share of short stories for quite a while now. Let's start to dig in a bit deeper. As we learned from Chimamanda Ngozi Adichie, a single story is a very dangerous thing. In order to truly learn, to truly capture the essence of life, it's necessary to have a holistic view. A single story can mean more than just what its name entails. We learned about how just a single narrative can paramountly dominate a character or character's journey. This dominance is evident in the real world as well, but let's hold off on that for a bit.
The first short story that we chose was The Things They Carried by Tim O'Brien. It takes place during the Vietnam War. We met many of the soldiers who carried lots of baggage, both literally and mentally. The main character, Lieutenant Jimmy Cross, is constantly thinking about the girl he loves, Martha, who is back home. He is responsible for all of his troops, but cannot stop thinking about Martha. As a result, on his hands, one of the soldiers die. In order to cope with the loss, he burns all of Martha's letters and begins to adopt a stern attitude towards the war. The second short story that we read was Alice Walker's Everyday Use. Here, we are introduced to Mama and her two children, Maggie and Dee. Dee is a woman now. Walker highlights the contrast between the two. Unlike Dee, Maggie is quiet, uneducated, and has scars and burn marks from her house fire. She is jealous of her older sister Dee, who is smarter, better looking, and gets whatever she wants. Mama and Maggie anxiously wait for Dee's visit home. Dee arrives home with an Arab boyfriend that Mama disapproves of and announces that she has changed her name to an African name, Wangaro, to fight the people who oppressed her. Mama also does not approve of this, and of course, siding with the narrator's point of view, we will continue to call her Dee. Now, the story reaches its peak. In the house, Dee finds two handmade quilts that she wants to use to decorate her apartment. When she asks Mama if she could have the quilts, Mama explains that she was planning on giving them to Maggie because they helped her connect with her ancestors. Dee throws a temper tantrum, most likely because this is the first time she does not get what she wants, and makes some nasty remarks about how Maggie isn't deserving of the quilts, saying that, quote, Maggie can't appreciate the quilts, and, quote, she'd probably be backwards enough to put them to everyday use. Mama refuses to give the quilts to Dee, so she storms out with her boyfriend and criticizes Mama's understanding of their heritage.
Now let's take a look at some of the dominant forces that consume the characters of our short stories.
Hi, my name is Jake. I live alone in New York City with my lovely daughter, Anna. We live a good life. She is currently enrolled in preschool. I do not see white elephants in the hills anymore. He and I do not speak anymore. I think that's for the better. I'm healthy and excited to continue my journey of motherhood. Anna has lots of friends, and they like looking at clouds and deciding what shape or animals they look like. Sometimes, just sometimes, Anna sees elephants in the clouds too.
2 years ago, I, along with my son and daughter, picked up the pebbles that lined the street and stoned my wife. How could I do that? Why would I do that? I am now forced to live with this weight on my shoulders, an unhappy life.
I am a survivor. I could not live with myself seeing such wretchedness, such a sad life suffer for my own happiness. Drews could not even mask the horrors that I saw in that room. I'm now living a happier life. I have a job and a family. I live my daily life relatively content. But the nightmares don't stop.
Looking back on my life is terrifying. Some might think that I died a sad death. They even thought I may have committed suicide. But they were wrong. I was ready to die, and at that time, I thought I tied up all my loose ends. But the afterlife has not been kind to me. The face of my late father, and my husband, the victim, take the place of any happiness that I may have had.
I reconnected with my culture, and I know I made the right decision. My father still disapproves. He goes on living and is completely dissolved in Western culture, but me, I am not. Going by my tribal name and spending time with my grandmother has allowed me to reconnect with all that my father shielded me from. I am proud of my culture and who I've become.
I am quiet and remain untouched by the outside world. I am a victim of a house fire and I am covered in scars. But what plagues me most is my tense and competitive relationship with my sister Dee. After the fire, things were never the same. She looks at me as an enemy instead of a sister. I love her, but I fear that things will never change.
Life has been different since the war. I've stopped focusing on childish things like young love. I don't carry any letters on me anymore, not even in the safety of my wallet. The flashbacks visit me at night. I used to think the war stories that I'd heard were just that, stories. But now I know that they are much, much more. They are my life. I may still hear the sounds of gunfire when I go on a subway. I may still have nightmares, but I do not carry letters on me anymore. I left the war as a highly regarded officer, and it's because I knew how to keep my men safe.
We clearly just witnessed the power of storytelling. The ability to be a good writer relies heavily on being a good storyteller. Good writers enhance their storytelling by using narrative layers. Each author uses a different layer to project the dominant force that consumes one of their key characters. While plot is a constant for every short story, other layers are used as well. In The Ones Who Walked Away from Omelas, we are introduced to a setting of pure paradise. By describing the joy of the children, music, and activities, we are served a sharp contrast from the end of the story, where we are introduced to the wretched being. This is a use of characters as well to create a consuming force. The one who walked away, who we personified, cannot focus on the fantastic setting, for the single character makes it impossible. She is one of the ones who, quote, know that it has to be there, end quote. This necessity makes the setting just unbearable. Hills Like White Elephants uses point of view beautifully to illustrate a dominant force. As Jig and her partner contemplate the birth of their child, their point of views are in a stark contrast. They recall the amazing memories that they have had together, traveling the world, trying new drinks, and living an enjoyable young life. Once the conception of a child made its way into their lives, they were no longer a happy couple. This unborn baby inhibits them from living the happy life that they once had. While they once had the world to explore, this concept of abortion is just so much for Jig that she confesses, the world isn't ours anymore.
In The Things They Carried, the author uses a matter-of-fact tone in his writing style to convey the serious and emotionally detached atmosphere of the Vietnam War. It helps convey the abrupt change in Jimmy Cross after the death of his friend. While initially he spends his time focusing on seemingly trivial things, in an instant he switches to match the objective tone. A Rose for Emily has the most obvious use of characters to display a dominant force. Her late father creates a complete dystopia for Emily. An entire town is focused on the day-to-day life of a relatively insane woman simply because the death of her father impacted her life in such a way. This void created by her father leaves room for her boyfriend to make this void even deeper. These two characters combine and make a horrid, daunting loneliness for Emily. This loneliness is an intangible dominant force that was created by the two tangible characters. Emily punishes herself every night by sleeping next to her dead boyfriend, crippled by her everlasting loneliness.
Now that we all know the dangers of a single story, we wanted to see how our short story characters would react if they learned in each other's stories. What would happen if they were able to meet?
Yes, I survived the Omelas, but surviving is not the same as living. I have seen the world that existed outside of my old one, but it is still as if I'm an outsider looking in. But Jimmy Cross's story has opened up my eyes to the real world. By hearing his story, I am better able to navigate in this new society. His story showed me a life much bigger than my own. The idea of fighting for a country and risking your life for people who you may not know. By thinking about a concept bigger than myself, I'm able to finally get past my old life.
With a single story comes the formation of stereotypes. While they may hold some truth, individual stories only have one point of view. This single perspective is dangerous because it can often be misleading. One person's story does not define the experience of all other individuals. Each point of view comes with a unique experience, and as you saw in the skit, when we combine these experiences and when the characters become exposed to different perspectives, they are able to learn and grow as individuals. As a result, this leads to a more truthful and universal story. Today, part of the reason our country is so polarized is because people tend to only read a single story, and most of us, even though we are aware of it, tend to do it anyway. My primary sources of news are CNN and the New York Times. I am aware that these are primarily liberal news sources, though I cannot pull myself away. Looking back on our reading experiences, we relate this to what William Faulkner expressed in his Nobel Peace Acceptance speech. He says that today we are living in a world of fear. As we let fear consume us without being active and fighting back, we are just like our characters that are consumed by a single force. Just as our characters came together, we humans must come together to break free from any and every dominant force.